Now, time to spread the Vegemite on. Here we go. This is the way we spread it on, spread it on, spread it on. This is the way we spread it on for cheesy Vegemite scrolls. Oh, there. There.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 96 for the 20th of August 2010. Richard Saunders here with you once again from Sydney, Australia. Episode 96. Good grief. So it's about a month away until our big 100th show, which will more or less coincide with our appearance at DragonCon very shortly. We'll do a special birthday recording of the Skeptic Zone. It'll be our 2-year anniversary. All that's coming up. But coming up on today's show, we have an interview with Banachek, the famous mentalist and magician. Now he's taken over at the James Randi Educational Foundation as the man responsible for looking after the $1 million challenge. More about Banachek soon. And that'll be followed by a brief report from Canberra Skeptics in the pub, where last weekend Dr. Rachie and I travelled down to give our talks. I gave my talk on basic skepticism, and Dr. Rachie gave her Dr. Rachie Reports talk. After that, it's Dr. Rachie Reports, indeed, looking once again at the latest shenanigans by those people at the Anti-Vaccination network. And to wrap up the show, we have the Think Tank, a lengthy think tank today with lots of laughs. A big thank you to all those people who support the Skeptic Zone by simply subscribing for only $1 a week, and you can do that at skepticzone.tv. Every cent really does help us make the show and do things like travel about to reach lots and lots of people. We are very, very grateful indeed for all those people who help us out in that way. So it's time to sit back, grab that lovely cappuccino, and enjoy this week's Skeptic Zone. Steve Shaw, better known as Banachek, was born in England but raised in South Africa and Australia. He has been performing magic since his arrival in the United States in 1976. Banachek is renowned for fooling scientists at Washington University into believing that his supposed psychic abilities were genuine during the famous Project Alpha hoax in the early 1980s. Right now, he is part of the James Randi Educational Foundation, having just taken over the $1 million prize. I caught up with Banachek at the amazing Meeting 8 in Las Vegas. And I'm delighted now to be back here in Las Vegas talking to Banachek himself. Hi, Banachek.
Hi, good to be here.
Now, you've had an interesting morning, I understand. You've just been driving down Las Vegas Boulevard blindfolded.
Yeah, there's an Australian television crew here, and they're shooting a piece with myself and Randy, and it's interesting. And it's a little play thing, and this guy tried to fool us with a crystal ball and everything, and using modern technology, but we busted him right away on it. And he said, what do you think I could actually do to try to get the attention of the media, because I told him he needed to get some media presence in order to be tested again. And, he said, well, what do you think I can do? I said, well, here, let me show you. And so we took him on a blindfold drive and his crew down Las Vegas Boulevard and some of the back roads down there. Yeah. About peed their pants, so that's, yeah.
That's a good start. Now, I've been certainly an admirer of yours for a long time, and 4 or 5 years ago, I bought your DVD series. which taught me it taught me more, I must say, about metal bending and spoon bending.
Thank you.
And I can sincerely recommend that. That looked like it was a fun thing to shoot.
It was a fun thing to shoot. In one area, there was so much that happened behind the scenes in that. We shot that whole DVD 3 times.
Really?
First time they got it back, and then they had a problem with one of the channels on the mics. So then we had to fly all the way up to Connecticut and shoot it again. And then when we were there, we were shooting in some person's camera place, and they kept having people come and go. So then we had to stop, and then we had to shoot again at night. So in that aspect, it was a pain in the butt to shoot. You know? But overall, I'm glad I did it. I'm proud of it. I think there's some really good stuff on there, all the metal bends that I invented. And I had to do that because there was other people who were putting out DVDs and tapes that had my bends on them. So I needed credit.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I got started in magic of putting out a lot of my stuff. My very first thing is Psychokinetic Time. And years ago, when Uri Geller was doing a thing with watches, Randy was going on TV, and he was actually exposing the method of pulling out the stem and changing the time.
Yes.
I said, well, how can I convince people that I'm not pulling out the stem? And I thought, you know what, if they take their watch off and I put it face down in their hand, and now I ask them to name a number after their hand is closed on it, and I make the hands move that many minutes, that would convince them I'm not pulling out the stem because I'm not touching the watch, I'm far away from it, and they name the number. And that was the first effect, one of the very first effects I actually put out, per se. And I couldn't give them away back in the day. And now every single mentalist out there is performing Psychokinetic Time. They're all performing it. But the reason I put it out was I had taught a young magician the effect, and I watched him later and saw him doing it, and he was doing it very badly to the point where it was almost exposure. And I said, oh, my God, this is bad. Okay, I better put all my subtleties into this book so other people can understand it. And part of the intro to that book was mentioning this young man, not by name. And he calls me up on the telephone one day, all excited. He says, oh, you mentioned me in the book. Thank you. I'm thinking, why would you thank me for that? You know? And so a lot of times magicians put out their own material that they use specifically so that they can lay claim to it before somebody else does.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's a very cutthroat world, magicians.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, it
really?
is, yeah, unfortunately.
The video also has a sequence, of course, with you with a small audience, so you can show how you present.
All the stuff I put out is real world stuff. I mean, other people, some magicians will try something once, or they've never tried it and they'll put it on a DVD. Everything I put on my DVDs is real world. It works in the real world, you know, and it will fool people.
It will, and and in the DVD too, there are scenes of you in restaurant.
Absolutely,
for example.
yeah, and you can see the actual reactions from the people. Yeah.
So the little crowd you had with the friends or rented crowd?
I don't know any of those people.
You didn't
No, just a restaurant. Just a restaurant, yeah. We just walk in, we say to the manager, hey, we know we're shooting a documentary. Documentary sounds better than a magic DVD. And you'll probably get some publicity as a result of it. You know, do you mind if we're shooting it? Oh, no problem at all. And we ask, we always have to check and make sure that people, hey, do you mind if we show you something where we have a camera crew here?
Okay.
And we get them on camera saying they don't mind. So, yeah. It's just real world people, nothing set up.
And the great reactions to the twists and all the things like that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, speaking of metal bending is very dear to your heart because it's something that really sort of kick-started you into this whole world.
Yes,
was inventing your own bends when you were hearing about Uri Geller.
Well, you know what's interesting is I had heard about Uri, but I'd never seen Uri. I lived in South Africa when he came to South Africa, and I remember holding a little pin and being convinced that I could bend this pin, even though I'd never been. I kind of was just looking for something. Oh, I think it might have, kind of thing. And that was because all the adults told me around me, they all believed in it. And so they told me it was real. So if all the adults are telling you it's real, it has to be real. So I was convinced it was, and it wasn't until I read Randy's book that I thought there might be another side to this. And from Randy's book, The Truth About Uri Geller, I was able to piece in my own mind what the bend should look like and take some of the ideas of Randy's and impose them on my own thoughts and come up with my own methods for bending metal, which were, it's interesting because I was on the same stage with Uri years ago when I was pretending to be psychic, and Uri turned and he said, these kids, myself and Mike Edwards, the other kid that worked on the Project Alpha with me, he said, these kids can do things I can't do. And I was doing things he couldn't do, like big twists and different bends and the time bend. And the interesting thing was when I saw Geller for the very first time, you never actually saw the metal bending, but I was always convinced prior that you would see the metal bending. But it was always a thing of covering the fork or spoon and then taking your hand away and it was bent.
Yeah.
So not knowing that, but hearing that the metal continues to bend and hearing on radio, oh, look, you can see it bending, and people being convinced that it could.
Yes.
I thought that every bend had to be a bend where you could actually visually see it bending.
Yeah.
So that's why I created my bends that way. So it's good that I hadn't seen him up to that point.
I've had somebody in Australia interviewed me at one stage or other, and they said, but Uri Geller, he just picks up the spoon and looks at it and melts, doesn't it? And people honestly
that's because
think,
that's the verbiage that's been put out there. You know, now Geller's advanced some, I think, in some of the bends from what I had seen in the early days. And some of the bends you actually see bending. You know, I don't know if I influenced that or maybe not. You know, but
the key.
Geller says he should. Now the key was one that you actually did see bending.
You did,
but that was one of the few that you and the nail. That was the few that you actually saw the item bending. Back in the early days.
Yeah, that's right. I remember seeing. Well, I've got quite a collection of Geller videos at home, and now on the internet, of course, I can go through YouTube and it's all there. I don't know why I bother even capturing it to my own computer, because it's there for the world to see. And I once put out a little video myself where he was doing a key bend to show that the angle had not changed. From beginning to end. And Geller had it removed off my YouTube channel.
Oh, did he?
He did,
Oh, wow.
So it's my connection with Uri Geller.
Well, you know, he has the rights to a lot of that stuff, or he utilizes people that do have the rights to get that stuff removed.
So he's still, you know, he's, apart from being famous for his metal bending abilities, shall we say, he's also famous for being incredibly litigious and suing at the drop of a hat. I don't know if he's still that carried away.
I heard Wiseman got sued recently, you know, over something, because in England, it's interesting that libel laws are now changing over there. It's not what your intent over there, it's what people take away from what you say. And there was something, I think, that Uri may have been told that Wiseman said that people walked away with a certain belief. But Wiseman taped it and was able to show no, which he rarely does. But he taped his talk and was able to show no, people could not have walked away believing that unless they wanted to, you know. But there's no, they would have had to have inserted some of their own personal thoughts and majorly have to have done that. So he was able to get out of that suit. Yeah,
it's quite interesting. Sometimes I do a show in Australia for schools, high schools, and I begin with a classic spoon bend. And what I really love is the fact that all the students have never seen it. They have no concept. What's spoon bending? Now, you'd think if it was a legitimate magic, psychic thing way back in the 70s, and it would be entrenched in our society by now. But no, the kids haven't heard.
You know, every generation's different, and that's one of the things about this. You know, we can only deal with the here and now. It's interesting you mentioned schools, because I used to do a lot of schools at one point, and I would come out and I would perform. And I would do impossible things, and then I would ask the students, I say, how many of you believe that what you just saw was real? And 90% of the hands would go up because it really looked real, you know, to them. They had no explanation. And I say, how many people do not believe? And you'd see us, like maybe 5, 6, 7 hands go up, you know. And then I would say to them, I say, why don't you think it's real? And the person says, well, because my dad told me that stuff's not real. And then I'd ask another kid, I say, why don't you think it's real? Oh, because I read in a paper or a book that it's not real. And those are the kind of answers I was getting. And then I would turn to those 5, 6 people and I say, you know, you're right. And they'd get a big smile on their face. I'd say, but for the wrong reasons. I said, you know, these other kids saw something they couldn't explain. And hence, they believed that what they saw was real. Well, maybe they should have sat back and said, I don't have enough facts. But you are doing the exact same thing, but just in a different way, really. What you're doing is you're sitting back and you're going on what somebody else tells you. Let me tell you a story. When I was a kid, all the adults around me told me that this man was real. He could bend metal with his mind. And so I believed it. You know, if they had told me it wasn't real, I would have believed that too. You're much better off saying, I don't know. And that's part of the problem with the educational process now, is kids are so scared to say, I don't know. And sometimes that's the smartest answer you can give, because the moment you say, I don't know, you can add to that, but I will find out somebody who does, or I will look for the answer. And then you go out and you look for the right person. And that is often the problem with the skeptics movement too, isn't it? I mean, you get skeptical about things, you get a lot of information about all these different things, and you think you know everything. And you don't.
Yes,
you know, Phil Plait gave a talk yesterday, and one of the things he said, when people come up to him, you know, they know he's a skeptic, and so long as they're talking about astrology, he's okay, he's fine, because he does know that stuff. But the moment they start talking about things outside of his area, he immediately says, look, you know, I'm skeptical about it, but, you know, here's a person you should speak to. I'm not the person to speak to about that. But so many skeptics don't do that. You know, they just take the little bits of information that they have and they throw it out there to support their argument, when they're much better off saying, you know what, I'm skeptical about it, you know, because of this, this, and this, but I don't have all the facts. And there's nothing wrong with saying that.
There's nothing wrong with saying it, although it is tempting to keep going.
Oh no, it is. It is very tempting. You know, we all want to seem like we're smarter than we are to people. You know, and I think that's that's just insecurities creeping in. You know, people that are very insecure tend to try to cover it up by trying to pretend that they're very smart. But sometimes the smartest people in the world, they're the quietest people in the room. When you're in a one-on-one conversation with them, they sit back, they listen, and they learn from what other people are saying, and they learn to strengthen their own arguments by listening.
Yeah. So at the moment, apart from, of course, appearing here at the amazing meeting in Las Vegas, what else is in the pipeline for Banachek?
Well, tomorrow we are going to announce that I'm taking over the $1 Million Challenge. I'm taking the reins of that. So a lot of exciting things that we're going to be doing with that. Trying to get a little bit more, put it more into the media eye. Try to be a little bit more proactive, going after some, high-profile psychics. Not that we'll succeed with any of that, but at least bring attention to it.
Yes.
And have more live demonstrations if we can. More live MDC $1 Million Challenge demonstrations.
Yes. We've got
we did last year. No, we don't have one. We don't have one tomorrow. What we have tomorrow is we have a demonstration.
Okay.
That's totally different. I have a psychic here who's willing to demonstrate her ability.
Right.
Not under any controlled conditions. It shouldn't be misconstrued that it's controlled conditions in any way whatsoever. There's no controls on this, in fact. Because what I want people to take a look at is I want them to realize how difficult it is to come up with a set of controls for somebody.
Yes.
So I thought this would be a nice way, and I know it could blow up in my face. Who knows? It's Sunday, and I'll hear about it until next year. I'll redeem myself next year. But we wanted to get somebody to do a live challenge here, but we couldn't get anybody. It was a thing of getting an affidavit and all those things. It's a lot more difficult to get somebody to follow through on the challenge as much as they want to than you would think. It really, really is. And then setting up the challenge in such a way that you're being fair to the claimant and you're being fair to your own controls. You're not conceding anything at the same time, but you're trying to do it in an environment that works well for the claimant.
Yeah.
So that afterwards the claimant doesn't say, oh, but I couldn't do it because of this, or I couldn't do it because of that. They always do. They always do, but we always try to cater to as much of that as we can, as long as it doesn't take away from our controls.
Yeah. And it's a very good point. They always do.
So far. I thought last year was going to be the one that didn't.
And her name was Connie...
Connie Sonnen.
And
she it was interesting because she said I cheated.
But she accused you.
She accused me of cheating, which was really interesting because at the press conference she did allude that whoever this elusive they had told her it was not time for her to show her powers.
I remember
her abilities.
And I think by
it's
now
like you can't have it both ways. You can't have that they tell you that it's not time for you to show your abilities, and I cheated you. It can't be both ways. Surely they would have told you I cheated you at that press conference.
Yeah, that's right.
But they did not do that.
This whole concept of they is a good one, and I've come across it so many times. It's not me; it's what I'm being told by them.
Yes. Well, that takes the responsibility away from that person. If they can put it off on somebody else. So. And the whole thing of cheating, I could see what the cards... I was just trying to move it along a little quick. At that point, she'd already failed at the point where she says, I cheated her. But I know that there were some magicians behind the scenes that want people... that like to stir up some trouble, and that's a shame. We want people to think that they're genuine when they're actually magicians themselves. So they got her stirred up and said, well, he could have cheated you this way, he could have cheated you that way. So, we deal with that. I just don't pay any attention to it. I don't reply to it. I don't defend it. There's no point, because the moment you do that, they'll come back with something else, and it just becomes a shouting match back and forth, and there's just no point in it. She agreed to the protocol ahead of time. And,
she did?
Yep, and she can always come back and apply again, and we could test her again.
Yeah. So if people want to find out more about what you're up to and a bit more about your history, where can they head?
Well, they can go to Banachek.com, and they can find me there. They can go to Banachek's blog at Blogspot. There I primarily talk about the psychology of human nature, and how it applies to things that happen in my life. So I try to put some interesting stories on there. Hopefully one day that'll all come together and be a book. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. They can go to Facebook. It's interesting because Facebook, I had Banachek, but I had an old ISP, and whenever I try to change the email on it now, it goes to that ISP because I forgot what the password was. So I had to get ban A and then check. But there is a Banachek fan page as well, so you can get me through that as well. And of course Twitter. So
You're everywhere.
I am everywhere, I'm coming up on that 5,000, that area where you just end up going into this gully, 5,000 friend mark. So I don't know what's going to happen at that point.
Banachek, thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
this is Yaron
and Liora
from Safek Savir, the skeptical podcast for Hebrew speakers. Come listen to all things unholy in the holy language at www.safek.co.il.
נשמח למאזינים נוספים מאוסטרליה.
Last weekend, Dr. Rachie and I enjoyed a lovely trip down to Canberra, where we spoke to Canberra Skeptics in the pub. We had a wonderful time, a good day out, and here are a few clips from some of the people I met along the way. And a big thank you to Andrew Gould of the Canberra Skeptics. Well, I'm here at King O'Malley's in Canberra with Dr. Rachie and I have just done our Skeptics in the Pub talk, and I'm talking with
Alex Stock.
Hello, Alex, and you've come along to see us today?
Certainly have.
And you're a local, yeah?
Yes, I am.
And you're just telling me that you've been working your way through all 96 or whatever it is episodes of the Skeptic Zone.
Yeah, over the past few months. And some free time.
And you didn't expect to be interviewed today either.
No, but I kind of hoped.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
And I hope you enjoyed our talks today.
I certainly did.
Yeah.
Stuck away at the back, had some pillars in the way, but got the gist of it. Yeah, it was great. Great to see you and Dr. Rachie after hearing your voice so many times.
Oh, it's been our pleasure to come down here, and I'm delighted to say the pub was absolutely packed today. What do you think? Over 100, 150 people or something? This is Andrew Gould.
I think we got at least 120 in here. I was really good. It was really impressed to see so many people.
Me too. No, I was very pleased to see such a big turnout, and people are sort of milling around at the moment asking us questions and having a chat. And we're handing out some stickers here from the Token Skeptic podcast and other goodies.
Yes, we are. Glad to have got hold of them, and thank you very much.
My pleasure. And I'm now talking to another guest here, another person who's come along to see us at the pub. Hello, it's Nicole, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Hi, Richard.
Hi. Now, you wrote to me and said that you listened to the Skeptic Zone when you were doing what?
My husband and I were listening to the Skeptic Zone a few months ago when we were driving to our wedding.
Now, some people have got more important things to think about when they're on their way to their wedding.
I was getting a bit antsy, so I thought, okay, we'll listen to something kind of a bit of distraction, and it worked.
Oh, good. So you did get married after all?
Yes, we did.
Thanks to the Skeptic Zone. There you go. Well, I'm really pleased that you both came along here today. Hello.
Hello. This is Luke.
I'm Luke. Hi, Luke. So thank you both for coming along. And people people are still crowded around chatting to us at the moment, but the pub is slowly getting back to normal. But I think it was a great turnout.
It was fantastic. So thank you and Dr. Rachie for coming.
Thank you.
Have fun.
So, Andrew, the event's just about over now. Thank you very much for helping set that up.
No worries. Thanks for coming down. It was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed it.
Now, if our listeners in the Canberra area are keen to be more active and do more skeptical activities with you especially, how can they go about that?
Well, you can Google Canberra Skeptics. The URL of that website isn't very user-friendly, so just do a Google. It comes up at the top if you Google Canberra Skeptics. They will list their monthly lecture. Unfortunately for listeners of this podcast, the next one is tomorrow. That's Monday, but that's Dr. Martin Bridgestock.
Oh, yeah.
We're quite excited to have him come up and give us a talk. The talk is issues that divide skeptics. Yes.
Interesting talk.
Yeah, it does sound very interesting.
But this is your normal watering hole?
This is our normal watering hole, King O'Malley's Irish pub.
Listeners, this is a really great location for a talk or a get-together. It's a fantastic spot for skeptics in the pub. So if you're in the ACT, if you're anywhere near Canberra, this is the place to be. Google Canberra Skeptics. Meet up too.
Yes, we're on Meetup. We're on Facebook. Canberra Skeptics in the pub on Facebook. We hold a monthly meetup. Third Sunday of every month, starting usually about 2 o'clock, as we did today. Sometimes we have a speaker, sometimes we don't. There's always good conversation and good people. So regardless of whether you want a big event like we had today or just a small gathering of 15 to 20 people, we have both.
That's fantastic. That's the message, everybody. Local skepticism in action. Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. Well, I'm not going to mess about today. I'm here to talk to you about how the AVN misuse statistics. And this is important because twisting statistics to make vaccines seem less effective or not effective at all is scaring parents away from vaccinating their kids. And I'm going to play you an interview today which demonstrates just this. Now, in Australia this week, 5 cases of measles were reported on the north coast of New South Wales, the home of the AVN. And recently, Australia has been experiencing a pertussis epidemic. But Meryl Dorey says pertussis or whooping cough does not kill. Now, her assertions were recently examined in the investigation by the Healthcare Complaints Commission. So briefly, a little bit of background provided by the Department of Health and Ageing. In the decade before the introduction of the pertussis vaccination, more than 2,800 people died of pertussis. Now, this figure was reduced by 75% in the decade following the introduction of the vaccine. Even if you don't die from pertussis, you can suffer horrible complications, including pneumonia, fractured ribs, pneumothorax, hernias, aspiration, hearing loss, carotid artery dissection, urinary incontinence, prolapses, seizures, encephalopathy, and possible death in the very young who have not yet received any vaccinations or who have not yet completed their course. So how does Meryl Dorey twist statistics to suit her anti-vaccine stance? First up, let's take a look at the AVN's website, which states that Australian government statistics have shown that the majority of outbreaks of pertussis in Australia occur in those who have been fully vaccinated or were too young to be fully vaccinated. Well, of course they do, and this makes sense, since if we consider that the majority of people in Australia are vaccinated for pertussis, and the vaccine does not prevent you from contracting the disease, so most people who contract it will have been at least partially vaccinated. But what is important to remember is that the disease is generally mild in those who have previously been vaccinated. In Australia, in 2004 and 2005, more than 70% of pertussis notifications occurred in people older than 15 years, which is when immunity begins to wane. So this may sound a little complicated, but it really shouldn't be. It is known, for example, and acknowledged that no vaccine is 100% safe or effective. Plus, a vaccine is not like a force field. So the virus or bacteria can still infect you, but if you already have the antibodies in your system from a prior vaccination or exposure, your body can fight the illness much faster, hence the disease severity is less and the duration is shorter. Seems logical, right? Well, maybe not to some. Late last year on ABC Radio North Coast, Meryl Dorey was interviewed about the recent pertussis epidemics that have been occurring in Australia. She provided the ABC with statistics about vaccine coverage and outbreaks, which were read out by the presenter to a North Coast paediatrician, Dr. Chris Ingle. As you're about to hear, Dr. Ingle was somewhat perplexed by these statistics.
Dr. Ingle, I just wanted to talk about some statistics with you that I have in front of me. Now, in 1991, Australia had a whooping cough vaccination rate of 71.6%. and 318 cases reported nationwide. Last year, in 2008, for the first time, whooping cough vaccination rates were in excess of 95%. And we had 14,522 cases of whooping cough on record. So,
could I ask you where you got your figures there, Catherine?
Those figures came to me from Meryl Dorey from the Australian Vaccination Network, who we're going to talk to in a moment.
Yeah, well, I think those figures are very rubbery, downright wrong. And I think a couple of things have happened. Firstly, pertussis runs in cycles. So you'll have years where there are low pertussis numbers and years where they'll be high. We've also developed a new way of detecting pertussis, which is called PCR, which is highly sensitive and specific. So lots of kids in the past, babies and children who we couldn't culture and they had no blood reaction to pertussis, but they had the illness, were, if you like, left off the figures. Whereas now we're capturing all those kids because we have a very good test. But, you know, those figures are typical anti-vaccination network figures which are, biased and skewed, and it's a cherry-picking exercise. So,
as you'll find out in a moment, Dr. Ingle was correct to call Miss Dorrie out for these dodgy statistics. They certainly confused a parent who called up later in the segment.
Michael from Tabulum. Good morning, Michael.
Hi, how you doing?
Not too bad, thank you.
We had our young son vaccinated to err on the side of caution. But my idea is that you had both the paediatrician from Lismore and the anti-vaccination lady quoting statistics which one said were inaccurate and the other one said were provided by the government. And I'm wondering, is anybody actually conducting current studies to bring this whole debate to a halt once and for all? As a parent, to hear something from a paediatrician than to hear something from someone who's got evidence pointing against it, it puts a big question mark over your head as to whether you're doing the right thing for your child.
Sure.
And then you get the nurse who said that her children, she stayed up for hours saving the lives of children with whooping cough, and then you wonder exactly whose interests anybody is serving when they start quoting statistics. And statistics can be tuned to bolster any argument, whether it's for or against. And I'm just wondering, is there any actual federal government funding that's going towards scientific empirical studies to make sure that we finally get an answer to this question? Because, like the gentleman before, I've been following this issue for years too, and it's never seems to be resolved. All you've got is to and froing between the pro and against.
Well, it's not just in this country either. It's an international issue.
No, and nobody, maybe the UN should take it up and study it, but nobody's actually coming to a conclusion about it. You've got this ongoing debate, and I'm sure all those people who don't vaccinate their children do it in good faith, that they've been given the right information, and those of us who do also do the same thing.
Michael,
there's nothing conclusive, Nobody says, okay, this is it, this is the study, you can't argue against this, full stop.
Okay, you raise a very interesting point. I do thank you.
As it turns out, there was a complaint made about the statistics used by Ms. Dorrie in this segment. This was upheld on November 11, 2009 by the ABC Audience and Consumer Affairs. They found that the complaint was upheld on 2 counts of inaccuracy in relation to statistical information referred to in the segment. The presenter referred to statistics which suggested that whilst the rate of vaccination had increased, the number of cases had also substantially increased in the period from 1991 to 2008. The statistics were drawn from different data sets and related to different groups of children. And although each individual statistic was in and of itself accurate and drawn from a verifiable government source, the comparative manner in which they were presented was misleading. Further, the first vaccination rate statistic was for the year 2001, but was presented as a vaccination rate for 1991. Here's what Ms. Dorrie had to say about the statistics in the same interview.
But my concern is that Dr. Ingalls is unaware of the information that you just gave about the 40 times increase in the rate of whooping cough despite a 24% increase in the vaccination rate. And when you said that the information that you were quoting was actually provided to you by myself, that's true, but I actually sent you the graphs which were from the Australian Government Department of Health and Aging. And one would think that a pediatrician in Dr. Ingalls' position would have been aware of this information. This is government information. I'm not pulling these figures out of thin air. These are not incorrect figures. And if they are incorrect, then it's the government that's provided the incorrect information.
As previously stated, whilst these statistics individually might be valid, the way that Ms. Dorrie has compared them has made them appear misleading. Ms. Dorrie also presented these statistics to the HCCC in support of her assertion that vaccination does not offer protection from pertussis. The Commission also investigated and agreed with the findings of the ABC, that indeed the data was drawn from Australian government sources, but critically, they were drawn from 2 completely different data sets. So what does this mean in layman's terms? Let's consider this analogy. You are the headmaster of a school and want to ensure that you get good academic rankings. So you take a bunch of kids in primary school who are doing really well, and you tell everyone, the parents, the media, the school board, that you have the highest achieving kids in their age group in all of the school district. Then you follow these kids through school to high school, but some of them drop out, some get distracted and don't perform as well. So by the time they finish school, their grade point average is poor. So what do? You choose another group of kids who were doing really well, who maybe didn't even come from the same class, or perhaps didn't have the same teachers. Maybe they only started at your school in their final year, meaning your teachings and your school had little or no impact on their performance in their final year. But you still want to look good to the community and appear to rank high, so you compare the kids from primary school who were doing really well, but have since dropped out, with the final year achievers who only started that year. Does this sound like a valid comparison? Well, obviously not. Yet this is essentially what Meryl Dorey has done, in reverse if you like, to make the pertussis vaccine look worthless. She compared two different groups of kids, unrelated sets of data, relating to different cohorts of kids, to get her answer that the vaccine doesn't work. Now, the HCCC asked her to explain this anomaly, and she responded with a corker. She explained that the data sets were appropriately compared by Dr. Gary Goldman. Now, Dr. Gary Goldman is the president and founder of the conspiracy theory-laden, non-Medline indexed Woo Fest journal that is known as Medical Veritas. It is described on its homepage as the only honest health science journal exposing pharmaceutical genocide. Oh, and also as a side note, it was the silver recipient of the 2009 Mom's Choice Awards. In other words, this is not a reputable journal. Now, the Commission surprisingly did not accept this source either, and asked for evidence of the methodology and calculations undertaken to achieve the statistical comparison that Meryl Dorey provided. These have apparently not been forthcoming, thus the HCCC concluded that Ms. Dorey showed no evidence for the claim that the pertussis vaccine is ineffective. Yet despite the findings of the ABC, despite the findings of the HCCC, despite what I've just explained to you, Ms. Dorey is still claiming that her statistics are correct. This is, of course, the hallmark of alternative medicine cranks. They refuse to change their position despite shifting evidence. And this is because their position was probably never based in evidence to begin with. I'll leave the final word with Mungo McCallum, who is a North Coast author and journalist, an outspoken opponent of Meryl Dorey and the AVN. Here, Mungo makes a great point about false balance in the media. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Mungo McCallum from Ocean Shores, good morning.
Good morning. Look, I just want to say that it's not true to say that this is an ongoing argument. The argument was settled nearly 100 years ago. Vaccination is effective. It's been proven effective over and over and over again. Sure, there can be occasional side effects, but the side effects are trivial compared to the diseases that they can be avoided through vaccination, and this is the point. And if it's all very well to say that parents have a choice, but when they make that choice by choosing not to have their own children vaccinated, they also put other children at risk, because the lower the rate of vaccination in the community, the more likely there is to be infection. And that's how the other children catch it. And finally, there's this question of balance. Are we going to have a debate about it? Sure, let's have a debate and let's have balance. So for every single time you put Meryl Dorey and her army of cranks on, or a handful of cranks on actually, you should put 99 separate doctors for the next 99 days on to tell the audience that Meryl Dorey is simply wrong, because that's where the balance is. The balance is 99% of informed opinion in favour of vaccination and one handful of cranks who indirectly caused the deaths of many children against it.
Okay, thank you for the call, Mungo.
Space. The galactic universe is comprised of literally dozens of stars in hundreds of galaxies. Man has waited millions of light years for the infinite rays of the cosmos to reach us, yet it can all disappear in a parsec. The distance is...
You have no idea what you're talking about, do you?
What?
Galactic universe? Dozens of stars? Parsec and light years as measurements of time? You know what? You need to go to the Star Party.
The what?
The Atlanta Skeptics Star Party.
What's that?
You really are clueless. Here, read this.
Okay, let's see. Please join the Atlanta Skeptics on Thursday, September 2nd, 2010 for stargazing, food, drinks, and amazing conversations. Held at the Emory Math and Science Center in Atlanta, Georgia, astronomers Pamela Gay and Fraser Cain will be hosting this amazing night. Ooh, I love those guys.
Oh yeah, keep going.
Pamela and Fraser will be leading guests in exploration of the skies using the observatory at Emory. Musician, podcaster, and science lover George Robb will also be providing entertainment. Who's that?
Never mind. Keep reading.
This event is in honor of Jeff Metcalf, the blue-collar scientist. Jeff succumbed to liver cancer in 2008, and all proceeds will go toward the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society in Jeff's name.
Nice, no?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Keep reading.
For those attending DragonCon, this is the night before the craziness begins. Go to atlantaskeptics.com/star party for full information. Remember, 2 meteorites don't make a meteor wrong.
Don't add anything. Just read.
Sorry. The Atlanta Skeptics Star Party with Pamela Gay, Fraser Cain, and George Robb. Thursday, September 2nd at 7:30 p.m.
You gonna go?
Oh, yeah.
Just make sure you listen mostly. Cool?
Cool.
atlantaskeptics.com/star party. Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
So angry.
And the dog. He's so angry.
And it's a good evening and welcome to the Think Tank. And tonight's guests playing a song that I've never heard before, I must admit. What was the song called? Where's Me Jumper?
Where's Me Jumper?
Where's Me Jumper?
By Sultans of Ping FC from County Cork. And the reason we're playing that is because it's on the latest Maynard's podcast.
And as you might have gathered, our special guest tonight is, of course, none other than Maynard. Hello, Maynard. How has your fortnight been?
Look, it's great to be here, but more importantly is what's coming up at the weekend, but we'll get on to that in a minute. Please introduce the rest of the drunk tank tonight.
We're not even... I mean, I'm having a diet.
It's one beer.
Hello to James.
G'day, everyone.
G'day. Where's your little sheepy? Is Sheepy along tonight?
No, he's staying at home sleeping. Had a big night last night.
Sleepy is sheeping. Dr. Rachie.
Hello. Little Nommington's here, though.
Hello, Little Nommington. Yes. Jason.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. My jumper's well, too. Jo Benhamu, the skeptical nurse.
Hi, Richard.
Are you skeptical?
I'm skeptical. I'm always skeptical.
Well, why don't you lead off proceedings tonight, skeptical nurse Jo?
All right. Well, for those of you living in Sydney and around Australia, you probably know that we've just started National Science Week. I think it was just started this week, wasn't it? Or,
on the week, right?
Yep. And one of the events on the National Science Week calendar is the Ultimo Science Festival, which is run in the centre of Sydney, and it includes some fantastic events on the science calendar, promotions of science and
Dr. Rachie and I have been part of that for the last few years, actually.
Yeah, well, we went down to Canberra on Sunday.
We went down to Canberra on Sunday. That's true. We'll get
Anyway, so I was having a look at the website for the Ultimo Science Festival, and I was rather, I guess the word would be horrified, shocked, dismayed,
taken aback
to see that on the calendar for the Ultimo Science Festival is what they're calling acupuncture and Chinese medicine clinical tours. Anyway,
Wait a minute, excuse me, interrupt you. Maynard, did you choose this background music? Oh, it's gone.
No, I'd say just as we mentioned acupuncture, ABBA sings Take a Chance on Me. Coincidence?
I don't think so.
Carry on, Jo.
So anyway, I was suitably concerned, and I decided to write to the organisers of the Science Festival and ask them why they thought that... Kylie! I can't talk when Kylie's on. Anyway,
Kylie Minogue, not Kylie Sturgis.
So I decided to write to the organisers and find out why they thought that this was a suitable event to include on the calendar of a science festival, because, as most of us would know, there is no evidence to support any science behind acupuncture. And I wrote to them and expressed my concern, and I got a response back from someone at the University of Technology, actually. I'm not 100% certain of how UTS specifically is tied to the Science Festival. They are based in Ultimo, and probably a lot of their events are connected because of that. And I do also know that UTS has run a course on Chinese medicine for many, many years. And if you'd like, I'll actually read you the response that they gave me.
Please do.
And you can ping your logical fallacies as you go. Dear Joanne, thank you for your interest in the Ultimo Science Festival. We acknowledge your concern over the inclusion of acupuncture in Chinese medicine clinical tours. Acupuncture in Chinese medicine has been part of the University of Technology, Sydney, since 1994.
Irrelevant.
The university has been The university has been The university has been undertaking high-quality research into the mechanisms of acupuncture as well as its therapeutic outcomes.
Fair enough. So
okay, if you actually had any decent studies, we'd be happy to look at them. Anyway, if you were to undertake a full review of the medical literature, you would find that in recent years a number of high-quality international studies with positive outcomes have been published.
Well, there was one just published in the NEJM, wasn't there?
Actually, I haven't had a chance to look at that one. The only one I've looked at is the one
there
which...
a mild back pain one or something like that?
Yeah, there was the one that came out about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. The one I think a lot of people would be familiar with, where they compared sham acupuncture, real acupuncture, and there were actually 4 streams in the study. And the study showed that sham acupuncture was...
acupuncture, the other one was just by the book, exactly where the book says, and the third one was personalised acupuncture. And, of course, the fourth group was no acupuncture at all.
That's right.
Now, all 4 groups actually received conventional treatment as well. So all they're really comparing is doing nothing versus doing something, irrelevant of what that something is.
The conclusion of the study was that sham acupuncture was as effective as real acupuncture. And the way that this was then taken by the media, and I think the authors of the study as well, was that sham acupuncture works as well.
Well, the authors of the study didn't really say that, but the companies behind it, promoting it, they were the ones saying, yes, it actually does work.
And that's actually been written about quite extensively on Science-Based Medicine. I know Stephen Novella's written about it. They've talked about it on SGU. So it's pretty well known, and people have commented on it pretty extensively. Anyway, she carries on. She says, there are many clinical trial-based papers as well. Just because those trials are out there doesn't mean they show anything. Simply because we do not understand the mechanisms of acupuncture does not mean that we should abandon the scientific investigation of this medical intervention.
Can I just add something to that, Joe? I'm currently writing a review on acupuncture, a review of the reviews of acupuncture. And there's a couple of reviews that I've come across that has shown a benefit over placebo, but it's been in conditions like mild back pain, as Jason just mentioned, and I think the other one was mild headache. So all these conditions that are self-correcting, if you like. The other reviews I've looked at is, for example...
Incredibly subjective.
Yeah, because they're all...
Oh, I've got a bit of a headache. Oh, I'll give you a rub on the head. Oh, it's much better now. Thanks.
Well, that's right.
It's a better effect.
Yeah,
you know?
because one of the studies looked at IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and guess what? Well, nothing happened. It didn't have any effects because that is a clinical condition that results in you. Well, you know about this stuff because you work in
gastroenterology.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I was going to say something else. But that's not something that, unlike a headache and mild back pain that's self-correcting and as you say, subjective, that's not something that can get better by itself. So all the studies I've looked at...
But similarly, though, IBS is, it's almost a diagnosis of what do you call it? I've gone blank. It's a diagnosis that's made by eliminating all other diagnoses.
Yeah.
So it's a
syndrome.
It's a syndrome. It's a very vague and non-specific condition. I mean, it exists, but again, it's like many other conditions that they claim to be able to treat with things like acupuncture, where it can be very subjective, and the responses are very subjective, and it's very hard to measure. So.
Was there any more to that letter?
There is more. She then says, I'm sure, however, that we can both agree that the purpose of the Ultimo Science Festival is to promote science as a whole. We do not believe that the inclusion of this clinical tour will undermine the fabric of science or the intent of the festival. Quite the opposite.
Really?
Now, I believe that this is more or less a form letter.
Yeah. Well, yes, this is actually a form letter because Iran Segev also wrote complaining about the same thing and got the identical word-for-word response that I did, the identical letter. So I haven't yet responded. Iran has responded. She did actually also send us, because she referred specifically to a particular paper, which she did send, and this is one that came out recently in Nature Neuroscience, and it's been blogged on extensively by David Gorski and Steve Novella, and it's another paper that's being thrown around by promoters of acupuncture, and they're claiming that this study was, proving and demonstrating that acupuncture works. But of course, when the study was torn to shreds, it was actually a very good study, but the study was really not of acupuncture. The study showed some very interesting things about how adenosine works in pain relief, and Dave Gorski, in how he wrote it up, actually said that it was a fascinating study that actually showed some really interesting things and had some really interesting clinical implications which scientists could actually use to create new drugs and work differently with treating pain. But unfortunately, the people who conducted the study were so attached to the acupuncture side of things that it really distracts from what was effectively actually a pretty good paper. But the study itself really shows nothing to do with acupuncture at all. The fact that acupuncture was a part of the study was entirely irrelevant. But people like this Nicole Eng, who's responded to my complaint, is holding this up as evidence that acupuncture works and why it is scientific, and we should be,
Do we know who Nicole Eng? What's
I'm
her
not
position?
sure.
I'm not sure.
I haven't actually.
I don't want to poison the well or anything, but is she part of the school of integrative Chinese?
Well, it wouldn't be hard to
bullshit?
find out. I haven't had a chance today. This all happened this afternoon, and I haven't had a chance to find out. So we'll get back to you on that
But
one.
what's also interesting about that, Joe, is she sent you one study.
One study.
Didn't she say in the letter there's lots of evidence? Mm-hmm. So that's one study. Why doesn't she just send a Cochrane review or something? I know why. Because none of them show it's positive.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not satisfied with the response I've been given. I don't think it explains anything about why the Ultimo Science Festival has seen fit to include this. But what I would recommend is, if anyone else feels the way I do, that you also write to the Ultimo Science Festival and ask them why they think that this is an appropriate event.
And what's the email address?
The email address is ultimosciencefestival@gmail.com.
There you go. In fact, if listeners Google kicking against the pricks, they can find an article written many years ago by Australian skeptics about acupuncture.
Can I just say that we got bumped from the Ultimo Science Festival this year? And
I was going to say, how do you feel about being bumped for an acupuncture?
Well, I think this happens. I think this happens every year.
Rhino killers.
Oh, controversial. I believe this happens every year. I seem to recall seeing it in the past. But yeah, we got bumped for budget reasons. So,
speaking about being bumped,
so you better not be sounding, bitter and.
No, we're not bitter and twisted at all.
There's also the lewd behaviour last year that you went with too, with the crowd.
Well, we only
there is that.
We didn't have anything under our lab coats.
I was going to say, this year you only went in your lab coats, didn't you?
That was inappropriate use of a power balance band.
Well, let me use the bumped for something else as a bit of a segue, Dr. Rachie. You and I had a marvellous time going down to Canberra, and thanks to Andrew Gould for helping to arrange that. We spoke to Skeptics in the pub down there.
Yeah, we had a fantastic day. It was packed out, wasn't it?
It really was.
I mean, I went there previously with Sheepy to see PZ Myers a number of months back, and I reckon there were more people there this time than there were for PZ. Yeah, it was chockers. Really
It was good
successful.
fun. But the day before, I was scheduled to go on a local radio station, 2CC, there in Canberra, and speak to their afternoon presenter, Mike Welsh. And so the producer emailed me, we lined it up, and I stayed home, just to take the call because I thought great publicity. And so I'm waiting and I'm listening online to the radio station, excuse me, before I'm scheduled to go on. And on comes Danny Nailia from Catch the Fire Ministries, right?
He's awesome.
And he talks for about 10 minutes or so. I'm thinking, oh, wow, why would anybody have that? He's the guy who said that the bushfires in Victoria a few years ago
were caused by the abortion laws in Victoria.
Were a retribution from God. So he's a nutcase. He's a card-carrying.
And on top of that...
exorcisms on hills outside Canberra once a year.
Yeah, and he's after witches and all sorts of things.
But on top of that, he also said he dreamt the Victorian bushfires were coming, but just didn't tell anyone.
Yes.
So I'm thinking to myself, why would anyone have this nutter on radio? I mean, what's the deal? And then the producer gets back on the line. I was waiting by the phone. Ring. Oh, yep, here, ready to go. She said, well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. We can't fit you in our schedule today. And so I wasn't happy, and I said to the producer, but you've got this guy on who said that the bushfires were sent by God. So, not happy. What's the expression?
Not happy, Jan.
Not happy, Jan. Anyway, but apart from that, Dr. Rachie, when we drove down to Canberra, we actually stopped on the side of the road and I took a call from another radio station, spoke for about, 15 minutes or something?
Yeah, it was a really good interview. Really long interview.
Did you go to Fishwick? Because that's good for porn, fireworks and wicker furniture.
I didn't know the wicker furniture thing.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the one I use as a cover story.
You're all right with the porn and the fireworks, yeah?
You can still buy fireworks.
Oh, well, I don't know. I imagine if you know the right people. I mean,
wow.
I mean, at certain times of the year, it's the place to go. If you want your hand blown off, it's the place to go to.
There's an interesting occurrence, and I'm glad Maynard's here, because he certainly knows the area a little bit better than we do. Maynard, there's an interesting story about some ghostly activity up north in the Newcastle area.
That's right. And, look, the local ABC radio station there, which I'm involved with, hasn't been covering this story because it's the kind of thing you don't really want encouraged. Basically, north of Newcastle, there's 11 Tree Passage Road, which is not very well lit. It's mainly dark. It's very straight. There are a couple of houses along it that might have lights on it, but it's reasonably dark. But having said that, there are a few houses as you would be passing. But what people claim to be doing, and there's a couple of videos available on YouTube, and it's been recorded on news.com.au, I think it was. If you go 180 kilometres an hour or faster...
That's fast.
Which I think in miles an hour is about 110 miles an hour. Would that be about?
About that, roughly.
About that,
We'll find out for sure,
well,
but anyway.
If you go that fast or faster, you will see the ghost of a motorcyclist approach you from behind with his light on, and it's the ghost of apparently a 20-year-old kid who was killed there 3 years ago in a motorcycle accident. Now, we haven't checked that, but it is indeed possible. But the fact that there's a number of videos going up on YouTube about this is quite alarming, and being the area it is too, it's a straight road. If the police weren't around, you might get away with being able to do that. And I can understand why a few people have made the videos. And you can hear the kids getting very excited about it, but we don't have any idea what it is. My guess is that it's probably a reflection in a certain area from what few lights there are around that area, or just a one-off. But why you have to be going at 180 to see these reflections, I don't know. It's certainly worth checking out. But since I drive a V-dub, I'm never going to really experience it because my car goes 183 kilometres an hour when it was new 10 years ago. So
downhill.
It's 111 miles an hour.
That's fast enough.
And my theory as to why you have to be going 180 kilometres an hour is because when you're going slower, you can actually see clearly enough to tell pretty obviously exactly what it is.
Yeah, why don't these kids slow down? Just slow the car down, put on the brakes, and keep looking at the light and see.
Because it's magic.
Because the legend is the ghost is apparently trying to warn them not to drive dangerously. So if you glow below a certain speed, you're not driving dangerously, and the ghost is not interested in seeing you anymore. You see?
That ghost is doing it badly wrong.
See, this is the classic urban myth that's going to get people killed.
This is a very good point, Maynard. In fact, I got a letter from our good friend Jay Novella at the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, because they've had some correspondence about this very thing. And one of their correspondents has written to them. I won't go through the whole letter, but the correspondent is saying, as a young person who has recently lost a friend in a car accident, I am especially saddened by this dangerous and stupid behaviour, which I wholeheartedly agree with. It's very dangerous and stupid behaviour
Well, I think
if kids are doing that.
The speed limit in that area legally would probably be 80 kilometres, maybe 100 kilometres at the most. And in Australia, well, in New South Wales, if you're going 25 kilometres over the limit, it's an automatic disqualification for 6 months. So if you're going 180 and you were caught at that speed, I would imagine, I don't know how long you'd lose your licence for.
But you showed us a video before, Maynard, of kids having filmed this, didn't you?
That's true. I showed you a bit of a video that the kids had filmed from the back seat, so they were not the driver, they were just the passengers in the back seat filming what appears to be some light approaching from behind. But there's a lot of artefacts in the video, and like I said, the road is very dark and very straight, but there is the odd light in the area from a house or something like that. There's not many, but there might be enough that could be reflecting within the back windscreen of the car. I don't know. And the test would be to drive the same area at a reasonable speed at around about the same time of night and see if there's any reflection there. But then you're getting into Top Gear land if you want to go driving around at 180 kilometres an hour.
Well, frankly,
they don't do it at night.
Anywhere like that, driving quickly at night, you run the risk of running over or bumping into a nocturnal animal.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. You could scoot over something quite easily.
So this would be something. Sorry.
You could get attacked by drop bears.
Yes, you could. But this is something I wouldn't be keen to investigate and test by driving quickly at night, because I think that would be too dangerous anyway.
I think it's dangerous to test, and
I'll volunteer. I'm not driving fast.
Well, the thing is, I don't think the police would even agree to a allegedly safe test because they just don't want any publicity for this, because it's not good.
No, and in fact, we strongly discourage anyone from being silly enough to speed along this particular road at night at high speed to check if some ridiculous ghost story is true. Take it from us, it's not. It's not true, folks. Well, what the local police are saying is, and here's a quote, "We want speeding drivers to know that the only bright light they'll be seeing in their rear windows will be the red and blue ones of our police car."
But once again, my theory, knowing the area a little bit, is that it's the reflections of one of the few houses or lights that are along that road, because it is very dark, so anything that is in that road is probably going to stand out in your rear vision mirror anyway.
Well, let's travel a bit further north now, James.
Just a little bit further north. If we go up to Darwin...
That's a little bit further. Yeah, okay.
Only a couple of kilometres, give or take a few thousand.
We are in Australia, not New Zealand. Okay.
Darwin is great because they don't drink and drive, they drink while they're driving.
Yeah, probably. Hi to all our listeners in Darwin.
Okay, we all know the attention that the psychic octopus got for the World Cup.
Paul, wasn't it?
Yeah, Paul. Was it? I was calling him Kevin because I couldn't remember his name, but anyway. That's just the name I gave him.
Kevin. It's Kevin's far more memorable.
Anyway, everybody else is jumping on the bandwagon now. There's animals coming out left, right and centre, and in Darwin, there's a croc that's apparently going to be able to predict the elections that's happening in Australia right now.
That's the right word, croc.
Yeah. How does it do this, James? By eating the person.
By eating the person? That's pretty close, actually. What they do is they get
redhead. It's all Julia Gillard.
They get photos of the two candidates and hang some meat down below it, and whichever one the crocodile goes for. Well, I'm not too sure about this. I don't know whether that's the one that the crocodile wants to lose because it's eating at them, or whether that's the one who's going to win.
But I can see some easy experimenter bias creeping into this.
But either way, the experiment was actually done this afternoon, and apparently the crocodile chose Julia Gillard to win.
Oh.
So we'll see how it goes. It has actually predicted some things in the past.
Well, next week we'll find out whether Julia Gillard won or not.
It's funny because the polls are predicting she's going to win too.
But look, I think there's clear bias because that crocodile is a known socialist.
Anyway, they talk about other things in here that this crocodile and the other crocodiles in the same enclosure have predicted accurately, but of course they fail to mention how many things it missed. So a bit of a shame.
Allegedly predicted.
You will have no leg in 10 minutes.
Well, it apparently got the World Cup as well, and one of its enclosure mates, whatever you want to call them, has also predicted a single horse race. One horse race.
What?
So they don't say how many horse races it didn't predict.
One horse in a race?
Yeah, the horse that won. It predicted which horse won one particular race, but they haven't said anything about how many predictions they got wrong.
Anyway, let's get back to more what's the word? Esoteric, more ethereal things, Maynard. What do you have for us?
Well, as you may remember, I put a call out a few weeks ago on this very show for listeners to send things in, and and Dave Ingram, I believe, from Brisbane, we think he might be, sent this recording in. And well, do you know what that is? Look, that is in fact...
Is
that a ghost?
The ghost.
It sounds like a ghost to me, Maynard.
It does sound otherworldly, but it is in fact, I think, the tomcat that belongs to Dave Ingram, snoring. That is Dave's cat snoring.
Now, listeners, the challenge is out. Can your cat beat that snore? If you have a snoring cat, record it and send the clip to Maynard
you can send at Maynard at Maynard.com.au, where you can hear the Mad Club podcast, which includes the song Where's Me Jumper and the freaky realistic hit Call Me Leonard Nimoy, Leonard Nimoy, Leonard Nimoy. Great track.
Thanks, Maynard.
That's okay, but are we going to tell people what weekend this is this weekend?
Oh, yeah, it's a very important weekend. I mean, forget the federal election. Forget all that. Forget who's going to be Prime Minister. There's something far more important happening.
This weekend, in fact, is none other than International Lighthouse Weekend.
No way.
Wow.
Now, and look, and I don't know about anyone out there, but I haven't been able to sleep for 3 weeks. and I've only known about the Lighthouse Weekend for the last 2 days. So chances are it might not be. It could be something else I'm doing that's keeping me awake. I don't know. But I tell you what, there's going to be people, there's going to be ham radio operators out there broadcasting to each other, and there's people just going to be looking at those lighthouses. And do you know, listener, skeptical fact, that almost all lighthouses are on the coast?
Oh, yes,
really?
But almost all. What do you mean by that, Maynard?
Well, I thought that there might be some smarty bum skeptic out there to go, well, Maynard, I've got a lighthouse in the middle of Moree. And in fact, there are lighthouses on inland waterways occasionally. So you can't say they're all on the coast. Just the majority of them are on the coast is a safe thing to say. And also light ships as well. Hello to all those people. And also, see, lighthouses signify a lot of people think that skeptics are. See, lighthouses and skeptics, people might think go together because lighthouses have beards, pipes, and a lot of loneliness.
Lighthouses?
Well, lighthouses have them.
Yeah.
Or lighthouse keepers.
Look, I've seen a few bearded lighthouses. And just because I get invited to better parties than you, I just think that's true.
I know the sort of parties you're going to. Yeah.
But now people are going to hang out at lighthouses on Saturday and Sunday. They're going to broadcast little messages to each other around the world, and they're going to celebrate the fact of big erect things with lights on them.
Are there any myths surrounding lighthouses?
Well,
there must be ghosts.
There
and
are.
stuff, right?
I mean, and there's a particularly very famous lighthouse called the Jolly Rock Lighthouse, Maynard.
That's right. And actually, when I did the story and I was looking for little bits of musical bits to put into my story, I found I Want to Marry a Lighthouse Keeper by Walter Carlos, now Wendy Carlos from the Clockwork Orange soundtrack. I found the Goodies episode, of course, the Jolly Rock Lighthouse. There's a whole skit in that about the Jolly Rock Lighthouse, and it's got a vaccine thing too for the skeptics because they get mumps in it.
Yes.
So it's got something for you people there.
Tenuous
connection.
Very tenuous.
And of course, I did include the famous Belinda Carlisle hit from 1989, Leave a Lighthouse for Me. But once I've said that, every time you listen to that song from now on, you'll think she's singing Leave a Lighthouse for Me. Because that's what it sounds like. Leave a lighthouse for me. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, Maynard, I think you're right.
Well, it is true. Look, and one other thing, can we mention Brian Dunning before we go?
Oh, we have to.
Okay. Now, everyone knows my favourite two podcasts are The No Agenda, which I love. They get into the wild stuff in the morning there. But, when I want the science, I go to Mr. Dunning there. And Skeptoid is the show. And I've discovered that his dad used to fly with Ted Robinson, the senator who was killed recently, allegedly by the Harper Ray, according to No Agenda. But that's another different thing altogether, which I don't think fits into this show. They used to fly Dakotas, DC-3s, or C-47s, as I believe the Americans called them, over the hump to supply the Flying Tigers in China during the Second World War. And I think that's amazing that Brian's dad did that.
That's an interesting one.
I think it's amazing you've uttered a whole sentence and I didn't understand a word.
Maybe I wasn't Welsh enough.
Flying tiger something?
Okay, gee, this is probably a bit of knowledge. Okay, let's work backwards. Flying Tigers, that was the Kitty Hawks flown by the Americans for the Chinese against the Japanese during the Second World War. They were supplied by pilots, one of them being Brian Dunning's dad, who flew DC-3s, the Dakota, known as the C-47 by the Americans, over the hump to supply them. So I was just fascinated. Over the hump, which was the Himalayas.
I see. Now it all becomes clear.
And you don't get much bigger humps than that, I guess, geographically. They're pretty big when it comes to humps. So I would like to see an autobiography by Brian's dad about the whole thing, because that sounds kind of interesting.
Folks, the things you learn on the Skeptic Zone. What can I say?
And I'm not even a scientist.
You're a historian today.
Yes, we're all a fountain. Each one of us is a fountain of endless knowledge, I sometimes think, including Dr. Rachie.
Because last week we were talking about the election, and we were talking about political parties that might be appropriate for skeptics to perhaps align with and vote for. And I said that I didn't know anything about the secular party, so I didn't know if they were any good.
Well, Ian Bryce is running as a Senate candidate.
Well, I do apologise for inferring that they weren't any good. I didn't mean they're no good. I just meant I don't know anything about their policies. So I since had a chat with Ian Bryce, who is running in New South Wales, and they do have very pro-science, pro-evidence-based policies. So if people want to know more about the secular party, just Google them and you can find out about their policies before Saturday.
So we advise all our listeners to carefully consider their voting choices this weekend.
Go to belowtheline.org.au.
Yes, now this is a great thing because in the Australian federal election, if you vote below the line, you have to number all the numbers 1 to 84 in your preference. And this is a bit daunting. I did this as a postal ballot and I couldn't get another one if I mucked it up, so I was a bit scared. But you've got this great website you just mentioned, and what's the advantage you can do?
It's good. I've used it too, yeah.
How does it work?
They list out all the candidates quite easily for you. You can select whether you want your preferences to be based on how the Greens do their preferences, by the Liberals, by Labor, and it lists them all out for you, top to bottom, 1 through at 84. You can reorganise them there. It's in a nice, easy to see list like that.
Yeah.
And then you can print up a sheet that looks pretty much exactly like the ballot paper, so that when you go in to vote, all you need to do is fill it out in the exact same way.
Oh, it's like in school when you went into an exam and you had the answers written on your leg.
It's just like that.
And
84 on your leg is a bit much.
Listeners,
I've got very long legs.
You
have got long legs. Listeners outside of Australia may be interested to discover that for the Australian citizens, it's actually compulsory for us to turn up at our election place and have our name ticked off. We don't actually have to write anything on the ballot. You can leave it blank and shove it in, but we have to turn up and have our name ticked off at least.
You can draw something obscene if you like. And my mum actually counts votes, and she's seen a lot of penises in her time.
Yeah, that must be an actual
What a job that is. Now, Joe,
Dr. Rachie's mum putting a poll back in polling.
Oh, poor Minnie. Before we get on to our last item there from Joe, can I...
Hang on, I've sighted the unicorn here. I will not be denied.
Oh,
now, I've got
wait a second.
This is testable evidence, okay? Now, 20 years ago, there was a major non-scientific hit in this country by an artist called Guru Josh. Infinity was the song, otherwise known as 1990 Time for Guru. Now, I'm showing this photo here of what I believe to be what Guru Josh looks like 20 years later doing some roofing work near where I work. Now, look.
I think that's Guru Josh appearing on Today Tonight, anonymised with a light in the background behind him.
Well, look, I had to take it quickly with the iPhone because I was 1 foot away from the guy, and I didn't want to say, I'm just taking a photo of you because I think you look like a 1990s raver. Probably wouldn't have worked. But he's wearing a 1989 Ravers hat. He's got a fluoro shirt. And look, he does look like he's been through a bit there in the last 20 years, so I think I have the only known photo of Guru Josh today.
Good
testable evidence.
Heavens. I told you, we're nothing but fountains of knowledge. Now, listeners may want to visit an interesting blog called codenix.blog. Codenix.blog. Random jottings about IT, science and critical thinking. And that's http://blog.codenix.org. Joe, the skeptical nurse.
Yes. I came across a curious article on a website called democratchronicle.com, which is apparently a long-running newspaper in the New York State area. Been around for over 100 years. Anyway, this piece was written by someone by the name of Les Moore, who is the Director of Integrative Medicine at Clifton Springs Hospital in Ontario County.
I'm already face palming.
It's you know, but when I get into it, there's really not much that's particularly different from any of the other nonsense that we've talked about woo and alt-med. But what really just got me giggling with this one is that this is specifically to do with current, state of war that America is in. And Les Moore's article is called Health Checkup, the Importance of Special Medicine.
Special medicine.
Special medicine.
classes.
Yes.
Is this like the Special Olympics again, is it?
And I'll read to you directly what Les Moore says. He says, when we are at war, we use both conventional forces and unconventional forces. Conventional forces battle directly against the enemy, while special forces teach the host nation how to defend itself.
Well, actually, that's militarily not quite correct.
No, it's not. But we'll keep going. It is the same with healing forces.
Jason just had desk did. That was the sound of his head hitting the table.
And yes, there is blood.
We have conventional medicine, which battles diseases directly, and unconventional or special medicine, which helps the body fight its own diseases. He then goes on to further compare and explain how special medicine is everything we know, like alt-med, integrative medicine, whatever you want to call it. But he then goes on to describe how special medicine is being used by the military today. Huh?
There was a Quackcast about this.
Really?
Battlefield acupuncture.
I haven't read that yet. Actually, in fact, this must tie in very closely with this.
My arm's been blown off. Stick a small needle in it.
Well, according to Les Moore, the US military is using acupuncture for pain management on amputees and burn patients returning from Afghanistan and Iraq. The US Army has a centre that focuses on integrative medicine for soldiers and family use. Nutritional and botanical supplements are used to enhance performance of combat soldiers. Special Forces soldiers are using acupuncture in war zones to help other soldiers maintain health and combat readiness, and veterans are using special medicine for health and stress recovery.
You know, people are driving while they're listening to this, Joe.
I know, I'm sorry. He then goes on to talk about organisations like there's now Acupuncturists Without Borders. And of
without
course,
morals as well.
And Naturopaths Without Borders.
And homeopaths without borders.
He says, you're going to love this one. Some of these organisations are able to build better immediate rapport with the people they're working with than organisations using conventional medicine because of similarities to traditional medicine.
Argument from antiquity? What?
I don't. That's a whole new one. It's a whole new one.
It's all argument from stupidity.
He finishes off by saying, at both tactical and strategic levels, the US military will continue to expand its use of special medicine in military operations, stability operations and nation rebuilding. Our response to disaster and providing of disaster relief will continue to include and expand upon the use of special medicine. Our own homeland security will depend upon our ability to investigate and implement special medicine for its quick response to security issues.
What? Note to self. When taking over the world, attack America first.
Well, don't worry, because by the way this is going, they'll be holding the infamous bomb detectors when you get there.
Well, I read a Wired magazine article that is completely off topic. Would anyone like to hear what it was all about?
Go on.
Okay, that if you, that it was a little interesting nugget that if you could have built an iPod in 1976 if you wanted to, but it would have cost $1 billion and would have been the size of a house. And they worked out that you could get the bits, you could have got the parts to do it, you could have got it to work in the same way, but in 1976 it would have cost $1 billion and would have been the size of a house. And I told that to an engineer and he said, well, look, that's for the parts and the size, he said, but to get the cabling run and everything between all the components, it probably wouldn't have worked. Because the run would have been too long between all the components for it to ever work. So I think that's very interesting. Like, sure, you could have mocked it up, but got it working.
Well, you've got these people...
There's a man here who's peed himself.
I'm going to leave the think tank crew in raptures, Maynard, because they're all losing the plot tonight. But I'd like to thank, in no particular order, yourself. Thank you, Maynard.
Oh, thank you. Check out maynard.com.au for some interesting podcast material there.
I'd like to thank Dr. Rachie. Dr. Rachie. Thank you, Dr. Rachie. I'd like to thank Nurse Joe, the skeptical nurse.
Thank you, Richard. Can I just say something before we go? Two things, actually. I would just like to remind everyone that as of now, there are 98 sleeps until TAM Australia. So that's very exciting. And the other thing I just wanted to say before we go is...
well, for you, there's only 5 for me.
We wanted to give a shout-out to our good friend George Hrab from Geologic Podcast. We've all been listening to his fabulous record, Trebuchet. I've got it on replay. You'll be pleased to know, SGU, I'm very sorry, I'm no longer cleaning colonoscopes while listening to you. I'm now listening to Trebuchet while I'm cleaning colonoscopes. But to anyone who hasn't bought a copy of Geo's fabulous record, Trebuchet, just go to geologicpodcast.com to find a copy.
Absolutely. And Geo, we're going to be seeing you, Dr. Rachie and I will be seeing you in just a few weeks, and we look forward to seeing you out here in Australia too. Jason, thanks for coming along.
Thanks for the lulz.
And James.
Thank you. And actually, I've got one thing I'd like to say quickly as well.
Yep.
Actually, it's just a little bone to pick with somebody in the skeptical community. Last Sunday evening, Rebecca Watson from SGU, she had a little go at sheep, which I'm not exactly very happy about. She tweeted, and I quote, "From afar, sheep look quite huggable, but I bet up close it's all hooves, lice and poo." Now, do you see any poo on me? Do you see...
On that interesting note, cheers, big shout out to Rebecca. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. Oh, dear.
It is Guru Josh.
What were all those cacks about earlier?
That's how chiropractic works.
Best thing ever.
What?
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone. One more episode to come out before Dr. Rachie and I jump on that plane and head over to, first we're stopping briefly in California, and then we're making our way to Atlanta, Georgia for DragonCon. And of course, Kylie Sturgis all the way from Perth will be making her way to DragonCon too. Fabulous times, I'm sure, and I hope that if you're going to DragonCon that you come up and say hello. You'll have plenty of opportunity. Until then, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone, a miracle of technology.